Welcome to our panel discussion. I'm Mike Young, President of QCT. Today, I have with me Dan Rodriguez from Intel and Bill Snow from ONF. We are here to talk about Central Office 2.0. First, Dan, we understand that Intel has been the leading movement towards standardized service provider platforms. So, for some time, right? So, what do you think? Where does the telco industry stand now in terms of adopting virtualized platforms?
Thank you, Mike. So, as you mentioned, we as a collective industry has really been on a journey of network transformation, really for a handful of years, and I'm really quite pleased overall with the collaboration we've had to date. We're seeing a whole host of OEMs, ISVs, OSVs, and network integrators really all pulling together to deliver virtualized solutions using standard high-volume servers as well as NFV-based software implementations. As a result of that, we're seeing a number of CSPs deploy VNFs across their networks in many different locations, and in particular within the kind of centralized core infrastructure, we're seeing a lot of uptake for things like VIMS, virtual EPC, and virtual BNG. And then if you just take a moment to just look kind of at the future for a second, and you think about 5G, and you think about all those use cases and the requirements, how it's going to push and really pull the network in many different directions, I think the automation, the scalability, and the flexibility of NFV will truly shine and become really essential for the 5G future.
Good, thank you. I also have a question for you. We're hearing a lot about the open and building open ecosystems. So, how have the telcos adapting to this kind of whole new world? Because they're whole new technologies, right? So, is it a talk, or did they cross the chasm in adopting NFV?
Okay, great question. First, just a little background. The Open Networking Foundation is an operator-led consortium. It has been around for about 7 years. It started after the work at Stanford, created really SDN and OpenFlow. Its mission became to shepherd the OpenFlow standard, and at the same time, there was another organization, Open Networking Lab, and I started that with Guru and Nick, and our mission was to create platforms to enable operators to really create agile service delivery platforms in open source. And as you probably know, we merged last year, so now Open Networking Lab is taken on the name of Open Networking Foundation. And again, we're operator-led. We have 7 major operators that are on our board, and we work with another 20. Have had really tremendous success from OpenFlow to creating the platform called ONOS, which is a highly available, highly scalable platform for SDN network control, and to Cord, which is really a lot of what we're talking about today, right? And that is transforming the central office. And Cord started with us working with AT&T and really understanding that where the biggest impact is the edge of the network, because that's where 80% of their costs go, and I would say probably 80% of their revenue opportunity going forward is there. And I don't know, maybe you saw IHS Market, and Michael Howard said 70% of operators are planning to deploy Cord. And but you asked if the telcos are really embracing the open source, and I would say that it's a spectrum, right? There's certainly a lot of activity going on in open source today in the networking space. You can see all the projects. There's a lot of people participating in those projects, a lot of effort by vendors and operators. On the other hand, I think that as an industry, we're still fairly immature in terms of being able to really efficiently use open source. And there's many years that the operators and vendors have operated in a different ecosystem, different purchasing models and so forth, and it takes time to adapt. So for example, operators today sometimes treat open source as a vendor. I've had operators come in and ask me what my roadmap was, when I was going to deliver, and it's really about, no, it's how we together create a roadmap, right? So I think that there's a lot of progress, but there's also a lot of improvement that can happen.
Good. So I think it's just a matter of time, right? So, okay. So in 2018, we know a lot of changes that will impacting the networks, especially IoTs and the 5G implementation, right? So how do you see telcos rethinking their central offices to make the most of these opportunities?
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Mike, and I'll definitely build upon what Bill mentioned earlier. So when you think about network transformation, and you think back to just what I said a few moments ago, is at the beginning stages, a lot of people really focused on some of the central core network locations, but now I think as people imagine the next generation use cases, they see the need to truly re-architect and truly modernize the central office and develop something called a next generation central office. And essentially what that's aiming to do is to be able to support the services as we continue to build LTE, as well as prepare for 5G, also handle more and more subscribers, and then be able to really handle both fixed and mobile operations simultaneously, really in the same location. And because of these goals, we believe that the industry will migrate to more of a software-centric approach that'll give them all sorts of flexibility, scale, and automation to deliver all sorts of new workloads very, very quickly, but then be able to quickly scale up or scale down resources depending on the needs of the network. And that scale factor will be from latency, bandwidth, as well as capacity.
Bill?
Yeah, so I think that 5G is a pretty interesting case with cord, and there's some very interesting technologies that go into that. One of them is slicing, for example. So a year ago at Mobile World Congress, we had a demonstration with a pretty good size part of our community on slicing with an application able to signal the network, and in this case a 9/11 type of application for emergencies, and the ability to recognize in the RAN the need to activate on a certain slice, and so end-to-end slicing from RAN all the way through the core. And also at that time being able to show that all the way from the RAN through the core, we have open source components that can be used to build these systems in cord. And in fact, Intel has been a huge part of working with us on that. But this year, Mobile World Congress is coming up, and again, it's going to be some really great technologies in preparation for 5G. One of them that will be evident this year will be P4 programming, and we'll be showing as part of our fabric the ability to have 3 vendors actually program their switches with P4. And one of the things, in addition to slicing, that this enables is the ability to actually offload some of these network functions. So for example, you can offload the user plane of the S&P gateways to the fabric and gain some considerable advantages there. Also further EPC componentry, which again comes from Intel collaborating with us in Sprint. And also showing the ability to interoperate with ONAP, so being able to set up these, the slicing configurations using ONAP, also being able to integrate with some of the MEC activities. So being able to show how different communities can interoperate. But really, even beyond the technologies, the thing that really I think is astonishing is that we have 17 organizations that have come together to create this demonstration running on a single system. It's not that they showed separate demos. These are all demos that run on cord pods. And they've done that in 3 or 4 months. And this really shows the power of the collaboration and the open source communities.
Thank you. I think you're very informative. And especially, I think you mentioned about, network slicing. It's going to be a very crucial, for the 5G implementation.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I'll just quickly comment on network slicing. So we definitely agree with you. Network sense slicing is truly what we view as essential to the 5G experience, having the ability to create individual slices of the network to hit the SLAs and KPIs, but do it in a way that you can still utilize your underlying infrastructure so you can maintain TCO. And you mentioned ONAP there for a second, so we're obviously big contributors to ONAP as well, and right now we are innovating on slicing by air interface type of service, and we're soon to be working on dynamic slicing in our Oregon 5G lab.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. So finally, I think we should also consider the example of hyperscale cloud service providers, which have been very successful in their efforts to build most efficient data center. So, what do you gentlemen think that what's the key lessons that telcos can learn in rethinking their central office?
So when I think about the next generation central office, I think about it and I really imagine that it's really a kind of mini data center, if you will, at the edge of the network. And then I think about the way comm service providers are thinking about deploying this, and they look at their central core locations, their regional data centers, and then their COs, and trying to have that consistent architecture throughout. So essentially having very similar NFVI configurations. And because of that consistency, they'll have the ability to truly spin up instances of VNFs very, very quickly to react to capacity needs in the network. They'll have a similar OSS, BSS model that scales, so a lot of benefit there. They'll be able to determine how and when they support different traffic patterns. So sometimes they may support certain traffic locally or keep it locally. Other times they may push it back. And then if you think about all the great use cases we're all dreaming up with 5G, it'll put them in a lot better position to be able to support those higher bandwidth, lower latency use cases that we're all imagining. So I think it's really about having that horizontal network and be able to monetize that network, deliver value, but also manage the TCO.
Good. Phil?
So I think we've learned a lot from some of the over-the-top providers. So for example, Google is a big part of the Open Networking Foundation, and there's a lot of room in these COs to become more like data centers, right? So COs having a lot of different types of equipment. One thing is moving to be able to provide a small number of types of equipment that is very automated, very easy to replace, very cost efficient, and of course virtualization is a big part of this. Virtualization not a goal in itself, but it's a way to really efficiently use your infrastructure, and we've seen some of these cloud operators drive efficiencies of their network up into high 90%, right? And so I think that I think about the real lessons that I've learned that stick with me. I think of Amin's conversation from ONS last year. Right? One of the things he said was, SDN's not even a question anymore, right? SDN's a given, and of course they've driven SDN through their entire network, starting with data center to data center, but they've moved it all the way out to the user edge, right? So being able to centrally plan, control, test network has been very powerful from agility and efficiency standpoint. And then the other big thing is operations first, right? So not doing anything in your network, not deploying platforms without really putting the big emphasis on, is this thing easy to operate? Is it efficient to operate? Can we do all of this in, you often hear the term zero touch, right? So you don't want to spend a lot of time hands-on configuring. You want that all to be automated.
Thank you. So we're out of time, but certainly we're not out of ideas. Thank you, Dan, Bill. We're looking forward to seeing you again, as we will explore more topics during the Central Office 2.0 event. Thank you.